But I mean, why do you think I've done all this for all these years? Because I'm minded about, and always have done, the next generation.
After years of avoiding the topic, King Charles has finally confronted the emotional truth about his relationship with his grandson Archie. This moment wasn't about a dramatic showdown, but a quiet, emotional realization of the distance time has created between them. Surrounded by what might have been, Charles felt the impact of distance more than ever. What sparked this powerful shift? And how does this moment change the future of the royal family? Join us as we dive into the emotional confrontation that marks a turning point for both Charles and Archie. The grandson he never got to know. In the royal family, children are usually raised close to the palace, surrounded by tradition, staff, and a very public way of life. But for Prince Archie, things were different from the start. When he was born in 2019, many expected he would be brought up like other royal children. But Harry and Meghan had a different plan. They chose privacy over publicity. They wanted Archie to grow up with more freedom and less pressure. So instead of growing up in royal residences, Archie's early memories were shaped far away from Buckingham Palace. He spent his early years in Canada and then California, surrounded by sunshine, nature, and a quieter kind of life. There were no royal photographers waiting at every corner. There were no public appearances or duties, just simple moments with his parents outside the palace walls. While this might have been what Harry and Meghan wanted, it meant something else for the royal family. It meant distance, and that distance was deeply felt by King Charles. At the time, he was still the Prince of Wales. He knew Archie was growing, but he wasn't there to see it. There were phone calls and photos, but they weren't the same as hearing a child laugh in person or holding their hand for the first time. And for Charles, this became something quietly painful. He didn't speak about it often, but those close to him say he felt the loss. Not just of Archie, but of the kind of family moments he never got to share. Here's the part that changed everything. Just months after Archie was born, Harry and Meghan made a decision that would send shockwaves through the royal world. In January 2020, they announced that they would step back from royal duties. It wasn't a slow change. It came suddenly through a post on social media. The message was polite, but clear. They wanted to work independently, live abroad, and raise their child in a different environment. They were no longer willing to live by the same rules. And that choice marked the start of something the royal family hadn't seen before. For King Charles, the decision carried a deep personal weight. It wasn't just a change in royal duties. It meant the growing distance from his family, especially his grandchildren. He had already missed countless milestones in Archie's life, and now it seemed like the chance to build a closer connection was slipping further out of reach. The feeling of distance from Archie was more than just physical. It reminded him of something deeper, something from his own childhood. He had always hoped that his family would be different from the one he grew up in. Warmer, closer, more emotionally present. But now, as he watched Archie grow up from afar, it felt like history might be repeating itself in a different form. King Charles understood the impact of this distance more deeply than most. He was born inside Buckingham Palace in 1948. From the moment he came into the world, he was already in the public eye. He was the first grandchild of King George VI and the eldest son of Princess Elizabeth, who later became Queen. That meant everything about his life was going to be watched, measured, and shaped for the throne. As a child, Charles didn't have much freedom. He wasn't allowed to play outside like ordinary children. His days were filled with lessons and royal routines. Even at a very young age, he was expected to sit up straight, speak properly, and follow rules. He was often surrounded by staff, nannies, guards, and aides. It was a formal environment, and moments of personal warmth were rare. At age 8, he was sent to Cheam School, a boarding school in Hampshire. It was far from the comforts of palace life, and it wasn't easy for him. The school was known for its discipline, and Charles struggled to fit in. Other boys teased him. He was quiet and sensitive, and he didn't enjoy the roughness of boarding school life. But he was expected to endure it. When he turned 13, he moved on to Gordonstown, a strict boarding school in Scotland. His father, Prince Philip, had gone there and believed it would toughen Charles up. The school's philosophy was based on discipline, hard physical activity, and self-reliance. Students woke up early, took cold showers, and went on long runs in all weather. It was meant to build strength and character, but Charles found it harsh and lonely. He wrote letters to his family saying how miserable he felt. He described the cold, the bullying, and the sadness. Unlike his father, who had enjoyed the structure, Charles was not made for that kind of life. He preferred books, music, and painting. He was thoughtful, and he paid attention to the world around him. But in a place like Gordonstown, those qualities weren't always seen as strengths. Still, he followed the path set for him. After Gordonstown, he went on to study at Cambridge University, where he became the first British royal to earn a university degree. He also spent time in Wales learning the Welsh language and history as part of his preparation to become Prince of Wales. So from a very early age, Charles was raised in a system that focused more on duty than emotion. His life was carefully planned, and expectations followed him everywhere he went. The rules were clear, the roles were set, and showing too much emotion was never encouraged. Now, watching Archie grow up in a completely different way, free from titles, public expectations, and royal restrictions, might have been a quiet contrast for him. Charles didn't say much about it, but the difference between his own strict upbringing and Archie's free childhood didn't go unnoticed. As for why Archie's parents made that decision, it wasn't something the royal family expected. And it wasn't introduced slowly either. The announcement came suddenly, and it surprised both the public and the palace. But what made Harry and Meghan decide to leave everything behind? Stay with us as we delve into this. Harry, decision for a different path for Archie. Prince Harry's decision to step away from royal duties wasn't a sudden reaction or a dramatic escape. It was the result of a long journey, a journey shaped by his upbringing, his deep concerns for his family, and years of public scrutiny that began the moment he was born. To understand the weight of his decision, it's important to look at the life he lived as a young royal, and the public controversies that followed him and Meghan before they ever stepped away from the monarchy. Harry was born into privilege, but he was also born into pressure. He was raised in the glare of cameras, surrounded by expectations he never asked for. From the very beginning, he was the spare, the second son to the future king. That meant less attention in official matters, but far more attention when it came to personal failings. His childhood wasn't ordinary, and it wasn't private. He was born at St. Mary's Hospital in London on September 15, 1984, and from that day on, his life was shaped by the public eye. Harry spent much of his early years at Kensington Palace with his brother William. The boys were close, and their mother, Princess Diana, made efforts to give them a sense of normal life. She took them to fast food restaurants, theme parks, and homeless shelters. She wanted them to see the world beyond palace gates. But that sense of normalcy was constantly disrupted by the media's obsession with their every move. Diana herself was endlessly followed, and so were her sons. Harry's earliest memories likely included the sound of camera shutters, headlines about his parents' strained marriage, and a never-ending wave of public attention. When Harry was just 12, everything changed. The death of Princess Diana in 1997, and the way it was handled by both the press and the royal family, left a mark on him that would never fade. He walked behind her coffin with his brother, father, and grandfather, with millions watching in silence. That moment defined much of his teenage years. Grief, confusion, and anger became part of his daily life, yet there was no time or space to process them privately. He was expected to behave, to smile, and to follow protocol. Harry's school life was strict and structured. He attended Jane Minor's nursery school and the pre-preparatory Weatherby School, before moving on to Ludgrove School in Berkshire. Later, he enrolled at Eton College, following in the footsteps of his brother. Eton was prestigious, but Harry struggled with academics. He found greater fulfillment in sports, particularly polo and rugby. Still, he wasn't known for being particularly studious, and rumors of misbehavior began to follow him. His rebellious phase became a favorite topic for the British tabloids. At 17, Harry was caught smoking cannabis and drinking underage. Prince Charles reportedly took him to a rehabilitation center for a day to show him the consequences of addiction. This was one of the first major public scandals involving Harry, and it cemented the image of him as the troubled prince. Also in the following years, Harry continued to face scrutiny for his personal choices. In 2005, he attended a costume party dressed as a Nazi soldier. The image went viral, and the backlash was enormous. Although he apologized, the damage was done, and it became another layer in the public's complex view of him. Still, Harry served in the British Army with distinction, even deploying twice to Afghanistan. He found purpose there, away from the press and protocol, doing something on his own terms. When Harry met Meghan Markle, things began to change even more. Their relationship progressed quickly, which led to speculation and concern within royal circles. Meghan was different. She was an American, a former actress, biracial, and divorced. Her background sparked endless headlines, many of which carried racial or classist undertones. Even before they were married, Meghan was under a microscope. However, once they married in 2018, the scrutiny intensified. Meghan was criticized for everything from how she held her baby bump to what she wore. With that, the controversies took on a new level of intensity. The use of public funds to renovate Frogmore Cottage drew public outcry. The couple had spent over £2.4 million, and while it was an official residence, the scale and cost of the renovations made headlines. People questioned their commitment to royal duty while benefiting from taxpayer money. Also, Meghan's appearance at Wimbledon in 2019 also sparked backlash. Her security team asked nearby spectators not to take photos of her, which many saw as overreach and entitlement. Critics accused her of misunderstanding her public role. Then there were the eco-hypocrisy accusations. Harry and Meghan, vocal advocates for environmental responsibility, were seen taking private jets to vacation spots. Critics were quick to point out the contradiction between their message and their actions. But perhaps the most damaging controversies came from their relationship with the media itself. Meghan's decision to keep details about Archie's birth and christening private clashed with royal tradition. Royal watchers accused them of secrecy and being out of touch. At the same time, Meghan was being vilified in the press, compared unfavorably to Kate Middleton, and accused of being difficult behind the scenes. Through it all, Harry saw history repeating itself. The press hounded Meghan the same way it hounded his mother. The headlines were cruel and the assumptions keep coming. For Harry, it was more than just an invasion of privacy. It was a threat to his wife's mental health and his son's future. He didn't want Archie to grow up the way he did. Harry had grown up in palaces, but they hadn't protected him. He had grown up surrounded by privilege, but it hadn't shielded him from loss, from pain, or from the constant intrusion of the press. He wanted something different for his family. He wanted Archie to be free, to run outside without fear of photographers, to go to school without headlines, to grow up knowing who he is before the world decides it for him. And, perhaps, King Charles understood that. Though their relationship has been complicated, and though Charles was reportedly hurt by the way Harry stepped back from royal duties, he may also have seen a version of himself in Harry's decision. Charles had also been raised in a strict environment. His own childhood was defined by duty, silence, and structure. He had once longed for affection and struggled with emotional distance. So when Harry decided to protect his own son from those same pressures, maybe Charles, deep down, understood. Maybe he saw that giving Archie a freer life was something he himself had once wanted but never received. But the monarchy has always been about tradition and keeping it that way. The monarchy is built on tradition, and its continuity relies on preserving established customs and practices. Here's the most intriguing part: titles and truths. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born into an undefined role because he was royal by blood, but was raised outside the daily rituals of the monarchy. His arrival marked a meeting point between monarchy and modernity. From the very beginning, questions about his status and title lingered in the background, casting uncertainty over his place in the royal framework. According to the 1917 letters, patent issued by King George V, only the children and grandchildren of the sovereign through the male line were entitled to be styled as prince or princess. This was part of the effort to slim down the monarchy, reduce entitlement, and align the crown with the mood of the country. When Archie was born in May 2019, the Queen was still alive, making him a great-grandchild of the monarch, not a grandchild, and therefore not automatically entitled to the title of prince. Had Archie been a child of Prince William, the situation would have been different. However, in 2012, Queen Elizabeth II had amended the 1917 rule to allow all of William and Kate's children to be born with the titles of prince or princess. Many saw it as a forward-thinking move that acknowledged the changing dynamics of succession. But the amendment had only covered the direct line of succession, which meant that Harry's children were left out. This left Archie with a courtesy title, Earl of Dumbarton. But Harry and Meghan chose not to use it. Instead, they announced that their son would be known simply as Master Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. At the time, they explained it as a decision to give him a chance at a normal life, away from the burdens of royalty. Yet the public saw the story differently. Questions began to swirl. Was this a snub? Or had the royal family quietly decided Archie wouldn't be given a title? The situation grew more complicated after Meghan's explosive 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey. During the conversation, she hinted that there had been discussions within the palace about Archie's title and security. She claimed that there were concerns about how dark his skin might be. Though no names were mentioned, the implication was enough to ignite a firestorm of controversy. For many, it was no longer just about royal protocol. It was about race, inclusion, and the sense that Archie had been treated differently from his cousins. However, the palace responded in its usual reserved tone, stating that recollections may vary, but the damage had been done. The issue of Archie's title became a focal point for the wider conversation about the monarchy's ability to adapt to the modern world. Some defended the family, pointing out that even Princess Anne's children had not received royal titles. Others argued that the palace's inconsistency revealed a deeper bias. Meanwhile, King Charles, then still Prince of Wales, remained largely silent in public. But in private, he felt the weight of the situation. He had long imagined a streamlined royal family, one that would be easier to manage and more relatable to the public. Plans for a slimmed-down monarchy dated back to the 1990s, and he believed that limiting the number of working royals was the way forward. Yet, as a grandfather, he also struggled with the emotional fallout. Archie was his grandson, and the idea that he might grow up feeling excluded from the very institution that defined his heritage weighed on him. When Queen Elizabeth passed in 2022 and Charles became king, the titles automatically changed. Under the same 1917 rule, Archie and his sister Lilibet now became entitled to be called Prince and Princess, as children of the son of the monarch. But this time, the palace did not rush to announce the change. It wasn't until March 2023 that the royal website was quietly updated to reflect their new titles: Prince Archie of Sussex and Princess Lilibet of Sussex. Even then, it was noted that the titles would be used only in formal settings, not everyday life. This muted acknowledgement mirrored the rift that had grown between Harry, Meghan, and the royal family. Harry had flown alone to King Charles's coronation in May 2023 and had left quickly to return to California for Archie's birthday. The moment made headlines, not just for the symbolic split, but because it showed the emotional tug-of-war between tradition and the new life Harry had chosen for himself and his son, Archie. King Charles, standing on the throne once held by his mother, now faced a challenge she had not: how to keep the monarchy relevant when members of his own family were walking away from it. As he watched Archie grow from afar, he wondered if his grandson would ever feel like he belonged. Would Archie, raised in a world of freedom and choice, ever choose the life of service and ceremony that defined royalty? Charles's own childhood had been filled with strict rules and clear expectations. From a young age, he was told who he was and who he would become. His upbringing was one of duty, sometimes at the cost of emotional connection. He had hoped that things would change with his children. Now, watching Harry raise Archie so differently, he wondered if this was the better path. Still, the absence of structure can be its own burden. Without the clear guidance of royal tradition, Archie might one day feel lost. He might question why his life felt separate from the rest of his family. He might resent the titles he never used, or perhaps he would feel lucky to have grown up without them. Charles's heart held both pride and regret. Pride that his son had the courage to forge his own way. Regret that things had unfolded so publicly, so painfully. He knew that the monarchy was built on the idea of continuity, of one generation passing the torch to the next. But that idea grows fragile when the chain is broken, when the next in line no longer wants to carry the torch. For centuries, titles had defined identity within the royal family. But now, in the modern era, identity was no longer just inherited. It was chosen, and that shift, that quiet revolution, had changed everything. As Charles looked at Archie, he saw both the past and the future. The boy bore the legacy of kings, yet he ran barefoot on California grass. He was a royal by blood, but not by upbringing. The crown was no longer a certainty. It had become a possibility, not a promise. Archie might grow up and feel drawn to his roots, or he might see them as a relic of a life his parents left behind. He might one day want to claim the title that once stirred such debate, or he might let it go, like a story from another time. These were the thoughts that haunted King Charles. Not the matters of state, nor the politics of protocol, but the simple, human worry of a grandfather. He wondered if his grandson would understand who he was and where he came from. And in that reflection, Charles found himself facing the monarchy's greatest challenge, not just preserving the past, but making space for the future. A future where titles may still exist, but where meaning is found not in inheritance, but in intention. The question was no longer simply about whether Archie would be a prince. The real focus had shifted toward what kind of man he would grow up to be, and whether he would ever see himself in the mirror of the monarchy. And now King Charles has understood one final truth. Legacy isn't something you pass down with a title. It's something you build in the quiet choices of everyday life. And for better or worse, that was now in Archie's hands. So, do you think Archie will embrace his royal title when he grows up, or walk away from it like his parents did? And can the monarchy truly survive if the next generation chooses freedom over tradition? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.